to here. All right, so we're in the fourth week of these workshops for B2B social media. And this one we're going to be talking about publishing on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn gives us two different ways to publish. One is through a status update, which is, I guess, similar to a Facebook status update, only, is that what they call them on Facebook, status updates?
Yeah.
But this is more business oriented, of course. And then the other way is they have what's called the Pulse content platform. And that's where you can go and publish long form articles, like even longer than blog articles. It's I don't know what to compare it to, other than maybe Medium, or it could be like a content site where everybody posts their own stuff. I mean, I guess it would, some of those like Business to Community or Biznology or some of those others, but there are two different, status updates and the Pulse platform provide the same kind of benefits, but there are two different approaches that you have to take to it for them. So we're going to look at both of those today. So this diagram here, these are the pie chart here. These are the elements that we've identified that are really critical to a strong LinkedIn program. And so we're on publishing today. We did profiles last week. The first two workshops, we focused on gathering the information that was necessary to create a good strategy, and then also setting objectives for the program. And then we'll just work our way through the rest of these pieces of pie and be done when we get through influencers. So today, I'm going to go through real quick just the status updates and Pulse articles, what we see is working, what some of the stats are, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mindy, and she's going to give us a live look at, we're going to go on LinkedIn, we're going to look at some updates and some articles and look at how they show up in a news feed, notifications, and on people's profiles, because this is how your target audience will see those status updates. So it's important to understand that. And then Mindy will show us how to create some status updates there. Big question first is, though, why bother to spend the time to publish? And there are a number of benefits that you get out of publishing on LinkedIn, one of which is showcasing your content. So if you or your company has invested a lot of resources into creating good marketing content, social media is a really good way to get that content out there and get new exposure for it. And LinkedIn is certainly the place to be for business to business. Gives you a chance to provide value to your target audience, and this is part of creating that trust and comfort with each other. And at the same time, you can promote thought leadership, which is new ways of looking at things, insights about business, just general what's going to be happening, trends that you see. Those are good things for thought leadership. And with the status updates, I think one of the most important things that they do for us is allow us to stay top of mind with our connections, because when you post a status update, it will, in theory, show up in the news feed of your connections. And so at least they're seeing your face and your name there. And it's interesting, I saw some data just this morning about how such a low percentage of people, of LinkedIn members, that actually use status updates, and it's like less than 20% of the people who consider themselves to be active on LinkedIn are really using status updates. It feels to me like everybody and their brother is doing status updates now, because you just kind of get bombarded with them, but the numbers are really low. And so if you take advantage of it now to use status updates in a good way, you can really get yourself some good awareness out of it. So in case you're not familiar with what a status update looks like, this is sort of the anatomy of a status update. It's not, although some people try to write these long drawn out things, I don't believe that they get read much. It's meant to be either a quick question, a quick conversation or to lead you to a blog or lead the reader to a blog article or some other kind of article, a slide presentation, whatever. So the good thing, one of the really good things about the status update, the way LinkedIn does it, is that it always shows your headshot. Here's another reason for a good headshot, Jay. Your name across there, and then whatever you've chosen as your profile headline is what is appearing under here. That might be kind of hard to read. Then this is the body text that was written about the status update. This is where an image or a video would go in. This is the headline for your status update, and then this gives you stats down here. General, I don't want to call them best practices because I think that, especially with social media, you have to keep testing and changing and to figure out what's going to work the best for you. But for just a sort of a checklist of things to start off with, we know that video is ranking high when you include a video in your status update. I think LinkedIn is giving it extra weight in how high it shows up in the news feeds and how often it shows up in the news feeds. It's also, and we'll see when Mindy takes us onto LinkedIn, as you're scrolling through a news feed to try to see what you want to read, and it's very much a scanning process, that video is moving and the movement will catch your eye. So I think it helps to increase somebody stopping and looking at it. Strong images do well too. I chose this one as an example because I think that that's a really, it's a powerful image because of the color in it when you see it when you're scrolling through a news feed. Now, the images, of course, have to have something to do with the status update. You don't want to just put like a picture of a puppy or something because it's cute in there, but it can be really useful. We recommend starting off by posting one status update per business day if you can. We don't see any reason for doing more than that unless you're really trying to capture market through oh, wait a minute. Yeah, sorry. I was slipped over to the Pulse. One business day per week is a good starting place. We're seeing them posting 2 and 3 and 5 times a day. It's not Twitter. It's not even Facebook. I'm not sure how necessary that is, but LinkedIn, I believe it's LinkedIn data, could be Buffer, says that with every time you post a status update, you will hit 20% of your connections. So with 5 status updates, you should be hitting 100% of your connections. I think there's some mathematical errors in there because there's nothing that says that same 5%, there's no overlap in that 5%, but still you start to get a pretty strong reach if you're posting consistently once a day. For an initial mix of them, of your status updates, we recommend that you start off with 2 updates that are about or drive to your original content. This could be something you wrote or something that your company wrote, but it's something that you're contributing as original content. One of those should be video if you can to start testing how video is going to work for you. Also in each week, you'd want to have 2 pieces of curated content, and this is third-party articles written by another expert, either on the same topic or a topic that is relevant or parallel or supportive, or maybe just something you find interesting. It's good to bring in that third-party content because particularly if they're experts, then their expertise sort of can wear off on you and help you just be perceived as more of an expert yourself. It also helps you to be a little bit less me, and not like you're trying to ram your own content down everybody's throat. You're bringing in other thought leaders and being more helpful and providing more value in doing that. I think there's another good reason for using curated content, because if you refer to the person that wrote the content or the person that you're quoting or talking about, if you refer to them in your status update, and Mindy will show us how to do that, they'll be notified, and the chances are good that they'll share that piece of content with their network. So now you're expanding your visibility even more. And then once a week, we suggest just asking a question. We found in some cases that leads to some pretty good engagement. People will start answering the questions, assuming the questions are interesting and worded correctly. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And that's why I say you just have to try it for yourself and see what's going to engage your audience. But so if you do a 2-2-1, that'll give you a good coverage to start off with, and then pick and see which ones are working best for you. As far as metrics go for status updates, a status update, when you share an update, it goes on your homepage, your LinkedIn homepage. It doesn't create its own page. So I think it's a little bit difficult for LinkedIn to get really good stats off of them. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt and thinking it's not just because they don't want to give us the stats. But you'll see in this example here, you see, if you can read that, it's showing likes, comments, and shares. Now this screenshot was taken from me looking at my news feed and George's, this post of his showing up in my news feed. So I'm seeing that there are, I think it was 16 likes and 3 comments, something like that. Looks like nobody shared it. What George would see looking at his own status update is also a metric called views. And that is not exactly what it sounds, because what view on a status update means is that it's the number of times that it showed up in somebody's newsfeed. So that doesn't mean they actually saw it or stopped and looked at it. It just showed up in that feed. So you got to take that number with a grain of salt. The likes, the comments, and the shares are more meaningful because they do show it's real actions that were taken. The Pulse articles are different. They're long form articles. This image here is probably 15, maybe 20% of the article. I couldn't get a screen capture of the whole thing to put it on here. But when you post a Pulse article, it creates its own page. It actually has its own URL, so you can send people to that page, and you get a little bit better stats on it. So there are a lot of people who apparently love numbers, and they go through and they'll go through 6,000 Pulse articles and look at and compare how many likes and shares and views, et cetera, that they got, and come up with data that says, here's what you should do in your article to get the most views and engagement. I'm not sure how true that is, but it gives you a starting point. And what I did was I went through several different articles of people that had compiled this information and pulled out the ones that they seemed to have that were very similar, they had in common, to give us some starting points for a Pulse article. So you want a short headline, 5 to 9 words, how successful people stay calm. So short headline, long article. 1,900 words to 2,500 words are the ones that seem to get the most engagement. That's longer than the vast majority of blog articles that get posted today. A lot of people do just post their blog articles on Pulse, and you may find that you have some success with that. And unless you've got a very good program running traffic to your blog, chances are your blog article will get more exposure on Pulse than it does sitting on your blog. But to really get the kind of article that people are looking for, you would want to maybe combine a couple of articles or go into more detail on the topic. For some reason, 8 images seems to be a magic number. So because these are long articles, you want to break them up with images, also subheads and bullet points, because it's online, they're scanning, they're in a hurry. And so the images should help them understand the article without having to read all those words. Video in the Pulse articles, for some reason, is not working very well in terms of driving any kind of engagement. So keep your video on your status updates now. The how-tos and interview type of articles are working well. Lists are still seeming to work well, although the people that I talk to are getting pretty tired of those. Questions in the headlines don't seem to work. So instead of saying here, how do successful people stay calm, you just want to make a statement, how successful people stay calm. Neutral language gets more engagement, and that means that you're just telling a story, you're here's the facts, here's what's happening, you're neither saying it's good or bad. In this example that we have here, you know, if you said 7 wonderful ways that people stay calm, it throws it into the positive, or you could say, successful people can't stay calm, why bother, throws it into the negative. A positive tone will get you more engagement than negative, again, according to this data, but neutral seems to be better. We recommend starting off with once a month. If you decide, as I started to say earlier, if you decide you really want to own Pulse, and if you see that you're getting some traction on there, you might want to increase that, maybe do it once a week. The more you post, the more opportunity you have to be seen. So it might be worth doing that for you. In the metrics on these pages, views means somebody that clicked to go to the article. So it does have some relevance here. And then the likes and the shares and comments are counting those actions as well. So I'm going to, with that, I'm going to pass this over to Mindy and let you take us on a tour of LinkedIn.
Hey,
anybody got any questions before we?
I do.
Go for it.
As you were talking about content and sharing articles and all this type of stuff, where do you, or how do you guys usually approach getting content to share when it's not yours? Like, I'll usually use something like BuzzSumo or, you know, something like that. I was just curious when you were mentioning that, like, where do you usually go to search for content that's within your industry or business to share with that's not yours?
You know, it's funny because Mindy and I were just talking this morning, I think it was, and we were saying what a good job BuzzSumo does of finding content for you. Google Alerts will pull, you know, some things through from you. I find, well, for myself, I find third-party content just because it's things that I'm interested in reading. So it's showing up in my news feed, or it's showing up in my RSS feeds, or just different things that I am, I'm looking at myself. When we're doing it for clients, it's different because it's not going to show up just naturally in our feeds. Mindy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think with clients, if it's stuff that I'm not necessarily interested in, but I need to keep tabs on it, usually I'll ask the client for resources or things that they tune into or newsletters. And sometimes I'll say, just forward them to me. So if they pop into their email inbox, they will have it set up, you know, with the Google filters to automatically forward, which is actually really helpful because then I can kind of see what's coming in their inbox. Some clients may not be that savvy to set it up for you. So I think just asking them for some sources is helpful. I find that if I just try to do it on my own without asking the client, and it's an industry I don't feel comfortable in, a lot of the content I pull in is either irrelevant, they don't really like it, you know, so sometimes it's just, I think, a lot of communication with the client to figure out exactly what content works well and resonates with them, and most likely it'll resonate with their prospects. So I hope that helps. I keep up with most of my stuff via email. I used to use a lot of like bookmarking tools and such, and I found that I would bookmark them and never use them, or never look at them, or like it, you know, the automatic like
my Chrome life.
My Feedly is just like, oh, there's too much in there. So what I guess the habit that I've gotten into is when I see a piece of content in my email, I try to add it to my buffer queue right away. So if I look at it, I'm like, okay, just take the time to write an update and throw it in the queue so I don't have to think about it again. And I feel like, touch it once and it's done. It's like a little productivity hack too. But it does take a little practice to get comfortable writing social media updates and I've written so many of them. It's like second nature.
I feel like it's a never-ending it's a never-ending process. You always have to keep
yes
on top of it. Do you guys use Edgar at all?
I don't.
I've heard of it, but I haven't ever tried it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say keep up status updates, because I use Buffer most of the time, but Edgar, you're actually able to so you populate everything, and it just, if you don't have anything new that you add to it, it just goes back to what you first posted. So it always keeps the flow going versus if your queue runs out, you're like, oh crap.
I know, I've had that happen with Buffer. I feel like I use Buffer, and then I use, instead of Edgar, I use CoSchedule. They have a CoSchedule requeue, which I think is very similar to Edgar. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Edgar. I thought about switching. It's a little bit pricier than what I'm paying now because I've had so many people. So it's like, okay, what's the trade-off, the ROI on it?
Yeah.
But yeah.
The other thing that we should say is when you're posting third-party content, it's important to add your point of view or say something on it that says why you think this is interesting, or why the person should bother to read it. I see people that they just post it. And then it's like you just become a news feed yourself. So give your opinion.
Okay. Is there maybe some specific questions that you ask yourself when you're trying to give an opinion about an article?
We find that there's three ways you can go. You can agree, you can disagree, now that's comments, isn't it, that I'm thinking about? Agree, disagree, or ask them for more information. I find, Jay, that usually in my mind, I've got a reason that I think it's interesting and that I think other people would think it's interesting. Like, here's some good ideas for applications you could try for content curation. I haven't tried any of them, but I hear that this one's good. Just that type of thing.
Okay. So you could ask, how could it be useful to others?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or any others.
What you're thinking through when you obviously are interested in the content, but if there is something actionable when you see something that you enjoy, that it would be worthwhile to think about, how could this help,
Well, so a real example that I can think of is that I was having a conversation with a guy from one of the authors of Challenger, not the Challenger Sale, the Challenger Customer. And he was talking about, so the CEB were the people that first came up. Are you in business to business stuff, Jay?
No.
Okay, so
but
there's
interesting.
What has changed a lot in business to business over the last, 10, 12 years or so, is that it used to be that business to business buyers went to salespeople to get all their information. That was really the only way that they could get it. Yeah. And then with social media, now they do a lot of self-educating before they get to that point. So the CEB, which I forget what that stands for, Gartner bought them, but they did a bunch of research a few years ago, and they found that the average B2B buyer was 57% of the way through the buying process before they would talk to a salesperson. Well, that got everybody all up in arms, and that's really what started the content marketing push. Was they said, we've got to have all this educational content for the buyers that don't want to talk to the salespeople. Well, so I was talking to him, and I was asking him if those numbers changed any since it's been 4 or 5 years since you did that research. And he said, well, Forrester has come up with, they did a survey, and they found out that 76% of business-to-business buyers make their buying decision, get their information for buying decisions digitally or something like that. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting, and that's something that would be useful and would certainly help us when we're trying, if we're trying to convince people that social media is important and they should be paying attention. And now here's something I can tell them that's third party, very, very credible, and will help them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree.
All right, Mindy.
Okay, let's take a tour on LinkedIn. All right, so if we go, let's start with the news feed. So if we go directly to the news feed, yours may or may not look like this. It just depends on who you're following. You can change this here to sort by recent if you want to see only recent, or top. And I think the default is top. So most people will be seeing the top view of posts. And we'll
Mindy, what does it
go ahead.
mean? Sorry, when it says top, it's obviously not recent because that's the other one. Is it top activity?
Top, it's kind of how it's LinkedIn's algorithm for what they think is most important to you based on your past engagements, your prior activity, what's popular, what people are liking, what people are discussing, who you're connected to. So it takes all of those factors into account and puts it under top. And
Okay.
I feel like a lot of times it's not relevant, but
Yeah.
you know, they're trying. You got to give them credit. They're trying. They can't read your minds. So let's scan through a couple of these and kind of just talk through what they are and what they're doing and whether they're good tactics or not. So this one here, this first one, Michael actually shared Steve's update and he didn't add a comment. So he just clicked on the share button and just clicked share to feed, put post. So that's why this one looks this way. What Michael should have done is probably added to the conversation or commented. That looks a little better than just like this generic share. When that's a good idea to just do that shares, if you are trying to build a LinkedIn company page, then you would want to do that to your LinkedIn company page. And I'm not sure if we'll get an example of that, but if you do that, you'll get a little follow button that will appear here. And that follow button is to encourage people to follow your LinkedIn company page. So that can be a very, very valuable tactic if you're using it in the right context. This one here, Josh, he pops up in my feed all the time. And he's an example of somebody who likes to write these mini blog posts that Susan was saying she doesn't think many people read. But he actually does get some comments on his and some engagement. I think you have to do it well. And he's kind of a gutsy personality. A lot of the people he's connected to are also marketers. So that's why he also gets a lot of comments.
He's writing in like bullet points too, isn't he?
He is. And that's like his style. It's like his signature style. He has a very, very large Facebook group with all of these marketers. And they have all kind of like followed him over to LinkedIn and comment on just about everything that he does or like it. So that's why he does get a lot of comments on his. So if that's your target market, if your people are very chatty and are trying to build their own personal brands on LinkedIn and you post an update like this, it may work. So it's worth a shot if that's something you're interested in. Richard Branson, he's an influencer. So influencers typically will pop to the top of your news feeds and it doesn't have to be something that's extremely popular. A lot of times I feel like LinkedIn kind of sprinkles them throughout your feed. But of course, Richard Branson always gets a lot of likes and always gets a good number of comments. Here's an example of somebody that is posting a question and then linking to a video. I don't think it's really relevant for LinkedIn, but he's trying to strike up some engagement. So this is an example of somebody I think you have to match what you're posting on LinkedIn to the audience, and keep in mind that LinkedIn is much more professional. This probably is something good to post on Facebook, but not really relevant for LinkedIn.
Why is that video not running? Don't they auto run?
I think this one, let's click it. Sometimes they auto run. It depends. You can have settings in your LinkedIn settings to turn them off so they don't auto run. And I think that's here. And I think I might have mine turned off. I'm not sure. Let's see, autoplay videos. So I have mine turned to no. So the videos don't autoplay. So if they annoy you, they annoyed me for a while, so I turned it to no.
I do find that they catch my eye though.
They do.
The movement.
Mm-hmm. They do, and sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not. Just depends on if you're interested in what the video is about, I guess. Some other examples here. Here's one of an image, and they did a nice job of tagging all of the people in the image and using hashtags. So this is a good use. I don't know exactly what she's saying because I don't speak the language, but just that the hashtags are great, and just letting people know, people that were there, letting them know, hey, I'm talking about you. So that's a good thing. Let's see what else I'd like to talk about here. This one is, yeah, I saw this earlier. I don't really, this is an example of something that just sounds very self-promotional. Like, okay, look, we were featured here on this piece of media. I feel like if you would add something more insightful rather than just saying, hey, look at us, that just looks very self-serving. So take that into consideration. It's good to share things where you were featured, those types of things, but add some context to it. Thank people, tag people. That also is really helpful. Reporters like it. If you were if you were featured in a media piece like this, it's a good thing just to kind of give them a shout out. And announcements are also pretty popular. What Jamie should have done is he should have tagged Jill. She's very, very active on LinkedIn. He also should have tagged Sales for Life, because then those would be highlighted, and that helps Jill get some more exposure and helps Sales for Life also potentially get more followers to the company page. So that's something that I would have done differently here. I probably also would have used a hashtag or two with like social selling. So those are some examples of status updates and just what you probably are seeing in your news feeds, what you might see. I was hoping for another video. Some of the videos we are seeing on LinkedIn here, like this one. So when you are making a video for LinkedIn for a status update and you're recording it on mobile, it used to, when you did it before, like just even a couple weeks ago, it used to be very square-like and it fit much better in the news feeds on desktop. And now when you do it on mobile, it looks like this. And I feel like it looks a little funky. So just take that into consideration. If you are making a video on LinkedIn, you may want to preview it if you're doing it from your phone, just to see if you like it and if everything comes into focus. Because I recently did one, and I think I have it here. And mine looked pretty strange, yeah, like this. And I wasn't really too happy with that because videos I had done before look like this. So you can see the difference.
You did those the same way?
I did them both exactly the same way. And so it was just like a week and a half later that it looked like this. I'm like, oh no, what happened to my video? So just be aware that LinkedIn does make changes to how things look and how they look in the news feeds. And on mobile, it probably will look very different than it does on desktop. So think about your audience. If they're mostly on mobile, then they may not even think twice. That may not be a big deal to them. But if they're more of a desktop audience, the older people or people sitting in an office, it just depends on where they're looking at you from. Take that into consideration if you want it to look really, really good. So those are some examples. Any questions so far?
Oh.
No? Okay. All right, let's look at some notifications just to see what you're posting and how it's looking in people's notifications. Susan talked about Pulse, and so when you share an article on Pulse and somebody takes action on it, either they like it, they comment, it'll show up in notifications here, so you will see that activity. It used to be that LinkedIn, every time you publish on Pulse, all of your connections would get a notification saying, hey, your friend published on Pulse here. And that was great because it was easier to build an audience with LinkedIn Pulse, but it's not like that anymore. So just because you post something on LinkedIn Pulse does not mean that people will get a notification. You most likely will need to share it as a status update to get some engagement on that. So that's usually what I recommend with like the 1-2 punch: publish on LinkedIn Pulse and then share it as a status update. And then you will get a little more traction on those articles. A couple other examples here of things that people will see in their news feeds. This one here, Daryl, he commented on somebody's post, and so that will show up in people's news feeds. So sometimes if you are a very active commenter and you're commenting on other people's status updates, that will appear in other people's notifications, which is also very interesting. And then you will also see a couple of these, like so-and-so shared this. I'm not exactly sure how LinkedIn chooses these. Usually they are either, from what I've seen, they are either newer connections to you. So if you're going and building your network and you're connecting with people and also sharing status updates, you are more likely to pop up in somebody's notifications feed as somebody who shared, a status update or topic or something along those lines. And if you get some comments, you are also more likely to pop into somebody's notifications feed that you shared something of interest. So think about that as you are crafting your status updates. Try to make them engaging. Getting comments is usually one of the things I go for with status updates. Sometimes you're trying to get clicks to an article or promote a piece of content, but comments are like gold on LinkedIn. It definitely helps your status updates pop to the top, helps get more engagement and get more views on your status updates. So those are a couple things to think about as status updates relate to notifications. And then let's look at a couple of people's status updates just to kind of get an idea of what you could post and kind of examples of Susan's ratios. They may not be exact to what she shared today, but let's see what's working and what's maybe not working as well. John, I've worked with him and I'm working with him. And he does, I feel like, a pretty good job of getting the right types of content, using hashtags, sharing third-party content, but also kind of promoting himself. Like this update here is something that mentions an event that he was involved in, and he used some hashtags here, and he's already gotten a good number of likes in just 2 hours. And that is definitely not a top performing post either. That's not something that I was expecting a lot of engagement on. So I feel like that's pretty good. It also means his connections are also very engaged. They're on LinkedIn, they're active, they're seeing what he's posting. Here's an example of a video. If you have YouTube videos, you can also use them on LinkedIn. They look a little different, obviously, because it has like the little play button. So it just depends on what you're going for. I feel like if you can actually make the videos and upload them directly to LinkedIn, that is better. But we were kind of running low on those types of videos. So I said, we still need to include video, so let's just use something from YouTube. So if you do have a YouTube channel, it's a good way to pull that content and repurpose it here on LinkedIn, and maybe also get a few more YouTube views and some subscribers. So it's kind of like a way to use both channels together. So you'll see that he asked a question, also included some hashtags, not as popular as some of his other stuff, but I feel like he gives it a good mix to his status updates. And then here is kind of like an example of like the short blog post format. This actually works really well for him. His people like to chat on LinkedIn, and they like to talk about productivity. So he usually gets a lot of likes and comments on these types of status updates. So they do work for him. And then also some stuff about his company, because he's trying to build the brand of his company. And he actually gets a good number of likes and comments on his blog post too, which I think is good. So that's kind of an idea of how, I guess, that ratio looks when you're actually doing it. What I typically recommend is kind of creating a content calendar, if you can, for each week, and just, Monday through Friday, and figuring out what you're going to post on each day, and maybe use Susan's format and think, okay, on Monday I'll do a video, Tuesday and Thursday are third-party content, Wednesday ask a question, and Friday, whatever is left, a piece of original content. So maybe going at it that way will be helpful in figuring out what content to post. Here's George. We looked at one of his updates earlier, and you can see the types of stuff that he posts. He also uses LinkedIn in an interesting way, like this update here, talking about where he's going to be and if people want to meet up. And this has actually worked really well for him in the past as well. He usually gets a lot of engagement on these. People reach out to him. They feel like he's a real person because he's trying to connect with people and not just be an online celebrity, like, oh, I'm so great, I'm always talking about myself. He's actually reaching out to say, hey, I'd like to meet up with you. Maybe you're in the area. So I feel like that's a good way to use LinkedIn as well. So sprinkling those in if you are going to events is also really good. And then he also is really good about tagging people and tagging companies, so people are alerted when he mentions them, and usually they will either like the post or share the post with their audience, which is good for his visibility. So those are some examples of status updates. Any questions on those so far?
Hey, Mindy?
Yes.
Go to George's profile so we can look at how, when somebody comes to your profile, how they see what your activity has been.
That's a good one. So when people come to your profile, they will scroll down. Sometimes they'll open the summary section. But next, what they're going to see is your activity. So this is how it looks when people come to your activity. If you shared something, it'll say you shared this. Replying to comments will also show up. And then if you've liked anything. So he has a really good mix because he's active on LinkedIn. So it's when people come here, they're like, oh, he shared something, he replied to something, he liked something. Wow, he's actually engaging on LinkedIn. It's not just George shared, or George liked. You want to have a good mix of those. And then where I took you before is clicking on his activity, and you can see all of the activities that he's taken on LinkedIn. And this is a good way to also research people to see if they are active on LinkedIn. Just go to their activity section and see what they're talking about, what they're posting, what they're sharing, what they're liking. It's another good research tool. All right. So let's talk about how to post a status update. When you are coming here to post something, you would just start typing. And if you want to mention somebody, you would type in their name like that. And sometimes it can get really finicky. I'm not sure if it's as finicky on mobile. I usually type in all of my status updates on a desktop. But sometimes it's a little tricky to find somebody, especially if they have a common name. Ideally, if you're connected to them or you're only like one connection away, like their second degree connection, it's a little easier to find them. But if it's John Smith, good luck trying to find that John Smith when you type it into LinkedIn. It's a little trickier. So you can also tag companies. So let's tag the conversion company. So you just start typing in the name, and there you go. About X, Y, and Z. Okay. And then if you wanted to add an image, you could just click here and choose an image from your desktop or from whichever folder you would want to do. Images work pretty well, especially if they are related to an event, if they have people in them, but don't do, no silly cat pictures. GIFs don't really work well on LinkedIn. I would stay away from them for the most part because they're just a little too silly. Videos, you can also add videos here. So this is where you can upload them directly. You can do that easily in desktop and easily in mobile. It's very, very similar. So you could choose a file here to upload. Just you have to be careful that it's in the right format for LinkedIn. I'm trying to remember, there's like a couple accepted formats and some of them aren't. So just make sure that you check that the video is in the right format. And then this is an interesting one. I don't usually tinker with the post settings at all, but my husband just walked in. Okay, so the post settings, it could be either public, and usually I choose public. You could do public and Twitter, and this means that it would share to my Twitter feed as well. I don't usually recommend that. I usually recommend just leaving it at public. And then if it's something you want only your connections to see, then you would click connections here. And you can also, if this is something that could be controversial or you don't want comments on it, you can just unclick the comments. So there are ways to adjust who sees what you're posting on LinkedIn. But for the most part, I just leave it at public. And then you would click post. And if you had any hyperlinks, you could just copy and paste them here. And it will populate and it will shorten them. If, like for instance, this one is not going to link to his activity, but if we were linking to an article or something, it would shorten it and add an image there. So that's pretty much how to post a status update. If you're going to make a video update, a video status update, the way that I've made them in the past is using Clips if you have an iPhone. So it's a free app that you can get on the App Store, and just it's really simple to use. You download the app, there's a caption feature, and I like using the caption feature on it because it adds the captions to your video. So if somebody's at work and they're watching your video and they don't want it playing the audio, they can easily see what you're talking about. And those videos seem to work pretty well as long as the captions are accurate. So make sure after you record the video that you go back through and fix the captions. I feel like that tool is really, really good at getting them pretty close and pretty accurate, but I feel like I always have to make some tweaks before posting the video. The video should usually be about 60 seconds long or thereabouts, and you want to make sure that it's really to the point, not too long, not drawn out. There are some videos on LinkedIn that do better, that are in like the 5-minute range, but for the most part, people don't have the time to sit and watch the entire video. So I would just stick with like 60 to 90 seconds, ideally 45 to 60 seconds to get your message across. You want to start your video with something about who you are, your business, your website, then talk about, answer a question in the middle, or give a really juicy insight, something people would not know. So make sure it's something of value, not just talking about how great you are or some project that you just worked on. Give them a tangible tactical takeaway. And then at the end, you want to leave a call to action. Maybe you want them to comment below or connect with you or share the video, just something for them to do, to take action on what you talked about in the video. And then in the app, the LinkedIn app, you can actually upload your video there. Usually it looks good, so just tinker with it to make sure that it looks good, but you can easily upload it there, add a good caption to get people to watch it, and use the same stuff that we talked about today for formatting, tagging people, giving shout outs. Those are all good practices to do with your video captioning or video status update as well. So I think that's pretty much it. Any questions? Comments, feedback?
What was that tool that you said you used for caption?
It's Clips. And I can send the link.
With a Z or with it?
Clips. Let me pull it up on my phone. It's Clips. It's just like CLIPS. And it has like a little picture of a video camera in the middle of it. You should be able to find it. If you have trouble, just let me know and I will shoot you a link. But yeah, that's definitely my favorite tool. And then the nice thing with Clips, just on a side note, is that you can actually take that same video and share it to, if you're big on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, you can take that same video and share it directly to those channels from your phone as well. And then it will look native to each of those channels. So it doesn't look like a YouTube video, which can look a little wonky or just like it doesn't look the same. Awesome. Yeah, so it's pretty awesome because then you can just share it to all the channels and it's like you're covering all your bases.
I like it.
Yeah, give it a try. Let me know what you think.
I will give that a try.
And tag me. Say, hey, Mindy, I used Clips to make this video.
By the way, I sent you a thing on Slack where it kind of breaks down all the different types of blog posts that you can make. So maybe that's something we can share with everybody. So
great.
They can use that.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I will share that with Susan and we can share that in the Facebook group as well.
Yeah. It's just really easy to think about what the different types of blog posts can be instead of just being like, hey, we're going to do something about this, but just to think about the comparison and some other stuff. So.
Oh, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll find other stuff. This is all from that course I took. But I'll just have to look through everything because there's a section on LinkedIn, but it's mostly about LinkedIn advertising.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And all this other stuff. But I'll look for more stuff. That's just something that came to mind right
Nice.
now.
Thanks
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, that seems to be it. I think if anybody's listening to this later and looking for an assignment, that now is a good time to start thinking about your status updates and coming up with a list of, say, 3 or 4 topics that you could talk about, 3 or 4 different kinds of updates that you can do. And if you want us to take a look at it for you, post it in the Facebook group or email it to Mindy or I, or we'll talk about it next week. Happy to help you out.
Yeah. Also, I would say try to have fun with some of the headlines. That's always really fun. I find it really fun because I don't know, I think it's goofy but helpful, you know.
Is that what you posted in the chat?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
So it's from I think they're like a content information company or something like that. They cover all types of SEO and content marketing and social media marketing, but it's more of an information resource. And yeah, you just put like the noun or the thing that you're trying to describe, and it gives you different headlines.
Interesting.
No, it's funny. Okay, that's completely different than Code Schedule, what I was talking about. Okay, this, I'm
this
gonna
is
have
like,
fun with
you know,
this.
what your mom didn't tell you about whatever, Salesforce, or how Salesforce is better than like red velvet pancakes, or, you know. It sounds like clickbait, but I think, you know, sometimes making it fun is not, as long as whatever it is that you're providing as far as content is meaty and insightful. I think clickbait is absolutely fine. You're trying to get people to see things that matter with a little fun in between. So.
Oh, that's a great tool. Thank you for sharing. Okay, I'm gonna be caught in this idea generator land.
I know.
For a while.
It'll be fun. I also have a swipe file. I'll send you my swipe file too that I have for headlines.
Okay, nice.
And that way you guys can share it. I'll send it out to you so you're the.
We will socialize it.
There you go. You can distribute it.
Thanks, Jay.
No problem, guys.
All right. Thanks, Karen and Santosh. Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you, guys.
And everybody.
Thank you.
Scheduling this every week and putting the work in.
I hope you're getting something good out of it.
I'm definitely learning the business side of it, so that's important.
Good.
I just started a business this year, so.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you, guys.
All right. Take care.
Have a good week.
All right. Bye. See
Bye.
you next week.
Bye.